There we go. Mic's working. Hi everybody. Welcome back to day 5 of my tutor's coding squads. We're gonna start at 5 past today, so gives plenty of time for people to hop on in. And yeah, we're gonna start at 5 past. We're gonna cover some function stuff today. So let's just wait till 5 past. Hi there. I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you? Just for everybody joining, if you want to just say hi in the chat and just say how you've been, how your day's been, and then we'll get things started. Isra says, I'm good. Oh, that's good to hear. How's your day been? You said it's been a pretty standard day. Yep, I feel that. Mine's been pretty standard as well, except for the weather, which has been absolutely awful. Oh, you said, how about you? Well, yeah, like I said, pretty standard day. It's been very, very rainy here. I went for a walk maybe about 5 minutes before this was about to start, and I got completely drenched. So, not the best start to a stream, but other than that, I'm doing pretty well. Just for those of us joining, if you want to quickly say hi in the chat so I know that you're there, that'd be great. And then yeah, we're going to kick this off at 5 past. Those of you who are waiting here, do any of you study computer science at GCSE / kind of Nat 5 level or equivalent? Does anyone here study computer science? You do. Okay, brilliant. Well, this is going to be perfect for you then. Anybody else? Hi there. Hello. You study computer science as well? Brilliant, brilliant. Is that GCSE level or something different? Okay, GCSE, nice, perfect. Well, this is going to be perfect for GCSE level, so I'm glad to hear it. Those of you studying GCSE computer science, what kind of languages do you have to do in computer science now? Might be a bit different since when I did it, but alrighty. Okay, Python, brilliant. That's pretty good then, because we're doing Python in this course. So that's pretty useful. I remember when I did GCSE, we had to do Java as well. I don't know if they still cover Java, but I think depending on different schools, some schools do Python, some schools do Java. I think some schools do like HTML coding, like web development stuff. So it really all just, I think it depends on different schools, but I think a lot of schools do Python. Okay, that is 5 past, so we will get started, and then anyone who joins, we will catch them up. But first of all, can you all see the presentation on my screen? Please type yes in the chat if you can. Okay, I see a yes, I see a yes. That means that you can see the screen. Awesome. So, welcome back everybody to My Tutor Coding Squads. This is day 5. Those of you who haven't seen this before, hi, my name is Fliss. I am the My Tutor Coding Squad person, and today we are going to be moving on to something a little bit more advanced than we've done previously. We're also going to be looking at making more kind of games, because from next week onwards, we're going to be doing more kind of game development stuff. I believe you still have to do a project in GCSE, so this could potentially be what you could base a project on. But without further ado, let's have a look at what we're covering today. So, as always, we are going to recap last time. We are going to look at today into functions, what they are, why they are so important, and how they are called, their basic syntax, how to call a function, return the value, and then we will make a little game using functions. So, just to recap what we did last time, people. In day 4, we looked at sequence selection and iteration. We then started to look at the Turtle library, which is a kind of graphics library that's pretty standard on any Python system. When you download it, it comes automatically with idle. And we use that to look at what for loops are. For loops are another way of iterating stuff, which is really, really important because we don't want to repeat ourselves when we're doing coding. So that's why we learnt that. If you weren't there for last session, don't worry. All of these sessions are on our playlists, so you can watch them anytime you like and catch up. So yeah, don't worry if you've missed stuff. You'll be able to catch up with plenty of time. So, without further ado, let's move on to day 5. And we are going to look more specifically into functions. So functions are one of the most fundamental aspects of writing a program. And it's essential that you understand how they work and how to use them. So functions are a way of decomposing a long list of code into different kind of blocks, and then you can test these blocks individually to make sure they work, and it means that you can run these blocks over and over again without having to repeat yourself. So it's really vital that you know what they are and how they work. So there are 4 basic ways that a function is used. Now, this is going to look like a whole load of jarble when I first put this up on the screen. I appreciate that. However, when we start to actually use it in Python, it should start to make more sense. But to tell you the basic 4 ways a function is used, you can call the function without passing any values. It does something and then does not turn a value. Call the function when passing in 1 or more values. It does something, no value is returned. Call the function without passing in any values. It does something and returns some values. Or, I know you can't see that because I'm covering the screen, but it does something. Calling a function 1 or more values, it does something and return some values. So what you might notice here is that there are 2 possible things that we can change with these functions. Someone's saying can't see the words. Yeah, hang on. There we go. No, I'm no longer covering the words. Yeah, so the 2 things that we can change with functions are passing in values. So this is like putting variables into the function from outside of the function. This will make sense as we actually do it. and returning a value. Sometimes you want to return a value, sometimes you don't. Someone asks, sup everyone, what's this stream about? This is about coding. This is about, more specifically, Python coding. We're covering functions today, which is quite an advanced topic. If you're into Python, or you're into programming, or into game development even, stick around and yeah, should be a fun time. So, that is basically a big description of what functions are. However, I believe that to be able to understand a function, you should be able to program it yourself. So, I am going to demonstrate how to create a function now. If you want to follow along, I recommend you get up idle or another Python program entirely to do this on. It should work with pretty much any programming language, any programming IDE that you do. But just to show you what the one we've been doing so far, we've been using idle. So if you click Python 3.9, and then idle, I use VS Code. That should work for today at least. We're not doing any Turtle library stuff, but for today at least, idle, any kind of programming IDE will work. But the one that we're using is shell, so you're going to click File, New File, and you're going to create a separate file here. And I'm going to, as I've repeated every single time, you want to save it somewhere where you know you'll be able to find it later. So I'm going to put it in my documents, and I am going to put it... I have a place for it. I do, I promise. There it is. My tutor coding. And I'm going to call it Day 5. You can call it anywhere else. Someone says, I like the pixel art, wallpaper art you have. Did you make it? No, I didn't. I like it too. It's quite cute. But no, unfortunately, I am not an artist. I am just a programmer. I wish I could make art, but no, I didn't make it. So, without further ado, Day 5. So, let's start off with a simple function. This is a function which has no passing values and no returning values. So, to start a function... Oh, someone's got a question here. How do you delete? You press the backspace. If you can't delete, you're doing it in the shell. And don't do it in the shell. What you want to do is you want to file, new file, and create a separate file. Then you should be able to delete stuff. Yeah, so how to create a simple function. So the way you start in Python is you write the word def. As you can see here, that is correct because it shows up in this lovely orange color, and then you can give your function a name. So I'm going to call it a_function. Creative, I know. Then you're going to write open bracket, close bracket, colon. Now we've used colon for so many things already, but that's how you end a function. Then you press enter, and as you can see here, now we're writing inside the function because you can see everything is indented. So I'm going to write print, this is code inside the function. And I'm going to print, so is this. There we go. So, to kind of explain what I've done here, this def is a keyword which tells the Python that we're starting a new function. In this case, we've called it a function. These brackets inside here is if you had any values that you wanted to pass into the function, that's where you put it. And then anything that happens inside the function is here. Now the fun thing is, if I run this program right now, press run module, nothing happens. Even though I've got these two print statements here, nothing happens. So to trigger this function, to make this function happen, outside of the function, see how I'm not indented? On line 10, if I write a function, now the function starts. So that is how a function works. you have to create a function and then you have to call the function using the function's name. So why might you do a function, you might ask? Well, one of the ways that we might want to create a function is we can run this code multiple times. The way that we can do that is either writing a function multiple times, or we could even use a for loop. So you can write for in range 5. If I write a function, open brackets, close brackets, and then run this code, it runs those lines 5 times. It means I didn't have to type those out every single time. It's already saved in that nice little function there. Another good thing about the function is if you have lots of different functions on your screen, you can test if something's going wrong in your code, you can test each function individually. That way you're only testing 1 or 2 lines of code to see if that's broken rather than, hundreds of lines of code. So that's why we put these functions there. Before I go any further, does anyone have any kind of questions about what a function is thus far? Okay, someone's asked when the function ends. So, the function ends after you stop indenting. So you see here, there's no indentation, so there's no kind of tab space. That's the function ended. What is the I for? The I is just a regular number used to just repeat something again and again and again. I've just chosen a random letter here, but you can use any letter you like. People just normally use I. Someone's asked, I don't have Python, so which website do you use to code? So if you don't have Python on your computer, you can probably find a Python kind of online IDE. Someone suggested using Replit. I don't know what Replit is, but if it's a browser-based IDE, okay, that could probably work for you there. Someone says, yeah, I'm using Replit. Awesome. Okay, Replit works for today. I would recommend going forward though, because we're going to be using libraries in the next session to use idle instead. What is Replit? Replit is apparently a browser-based IDE, so you can program on the browser. Cool. So, not seeing any other questions on how functions work, so I will move on. So I'm going to get rid of this for loop for now. So we've looked at a simple function that has no passing values and no returns. However, sometimes we want to add values into our function. So I'm going to create a function here called def square. I'll write out the function first and I'll explain what I'm doing. And add 3. Now, so far, I've set up this function to be exactly the same as the function previously. However, this time, I'm going to write value inside that bracket there. Okay. Once I've done that, I can start adding stuff into my function. So I can say answer, I'm going to create a variable called answer, equals value multiplied by value plus 3. I'll explain what I'm doing in a sec. Then I can write return answer. So this here is a function with a passing value. This is sometimes called an argument. I'd recommend remembering that word because it will give you lots of brownie points at GCSE. And it has a return value. So what's going to happen when I call this function? Well, what happens is, I'll get to that in a second. What happens is, if I call this function, any value inside those brackets there will get squared and then added by 3. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to create a variable here called number, and I'm going to set it to square and add 3. And then if I put the number 2 in there and print out number, what happens is that number 2 goes inside this function, gets squared, and then added by 3. So that's what return is. Okay, I see you've got a few questions there. What is def? Def is a keyword that starts a function. So if you want to start a function, you use def. Return here allows you to return a number. Allows you to return a value from the function, sorry. Wouldn't value be a string? In this case, no, because we're just using integers. Someone says it's really hard to hear me. Hang on. Is that better? Oh, that's a bit loud. There we go. Is that a bit better? Then hopefully that's loud enough. But yeah, that's what's happening here. We take a value in the brackets, and then we can do some maths with it and then return it back to our variable. So if I change this number here to be 4, let's say, what it does here is takes that value, squares it, adds 3, and then returns it back to number. So then we print number is now 19. So that's how functions work, and that's how we can take functions in and return them. Do we have any kind of questions on functions yet? Is this GCSE? Because I haven't learned this. I did cover this in GCSE. I believe this is GCSE, but I'm going to have to double check. I do believe that you still have to do a project at the end of GCSE. And if you can use functions in your project, I believe you get very high grades. So I believe this is GCSE though. Do we have any other questions? Someone asked, what's GCSE? GCSE is the test that you take in England and Wales at year 11, so I believe like 15, 16? Someone said, I just finished this topic, I'm doing it in year 9. Alrighty, I'm guessing this is relevant then. Awesome. But yeah, not seeing any questions so far on functions. I do understand that functions are a wee bit difficult when you're not actually using them in a project. So what we're going to do for the rest of the session is we're going to create a project using these functions. So wait for my computer to load. So for the rest of the session, we are going to be doing an activity using these functions. More specifically, we're going to create a game called Monster Catcher. This is not based on anything whatsoever, but basically, the rules of this game is your user will choose a monster, either a fire monster, a water monster, or a grass monster. Then a computer-generated program is going to choose a monster. Then you're going to determine a winner using these rules that you can see on the screen here. So water extinguishes fire, fire burns grass, and grass soaks up water. So that's how this works. So a winner is determined between the user's monster and the computer's monster. And then finally, we'll ask the user whether they can play again. So just looking at these rules here, you can kind of see that functions are already going to emerge. I'm seeing everyone's kind of choosing the monster for the monster catcher. I'm guessing that's totally not based on anything whatsoever. If you had to choose a fire monster, a water monster, or a grass monster, which one would people choose? I'm seeing a lot of fire or earth. Anyone else want to got a monster in mind from a video game, possibly? I wonder if anyone's going to catch on to what this is about. Someone chose fire. Awesome. Is it like scissors, paper, rock? Yes, the rules are you can interchange the rules for fire, water, grass with rock, paper, scissors. But I quite like the game that I totally didn't steal this from. So, but yeah, they're one and the same. But yeah, so let's build ourselves a little video game using functions. So, going back to my programming screen, I'm going to create a new program. And I'm going to save this program as fire... Oh no, I'll call it monster catcher. Just like that. Okay. Now I'll start by calling it. Someone thinks it's based off Avatar: The Last Airbender. I mean, I guess. That is not what I based this off, though. I wonder if anyone else can guess what it's based off. It shouldn't be too hard to guess. Okay. Hang on. Someone thinks it's Minecraft. Not Minecraft. Good guess, but no. Anyone know what this is based off? Someone guessed, is the game popular? Yes, it should be very popular. Maybe you might get it as we go along. But is it an old or a new game? Yes, it is. It's both an old game and a new game. They keep remaking them. They remake them like all the time. I used to play at a friend's house. Oh, same. I first got introduced to it by my friend. But yeah. So for this monster catcher game, the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to import a library called random. Now this should be a library that is included on most Python systems anyway. If it's not, there is another way you can do it, but random should work. So, for this monster catcher game, like I said before, we're going to be using a few different functions. Some people in the comments have got it. It's Pokemon. I thought it was quite fun. I like Pokemon. Someone searched it. Okay, brilliant. So, where was I? Yeah. So, this game alludes itself to a few functions. One of them would be to take the user input. One would be to make the computer choose. And one would be to determine our winner. There's a few other functions you can do with this, but we're going to start with these ones now. Another thing you can do is you can also have a main function, and we'll look at that a little bit later on. But the first function is we want to take in the user input. So I'm going to start by calling the function user choice. I'll use a choose. I'll call it user choose. Open brackets, close brackets, colon. So this function is going to have a variable called user underscore choice. And it's going to allow the user to input their choice of monster. So enter a monster. And just to make sure they don't get confused, I'm going to say fire, water, grass. And then after that, we want to return their choice back to the main program. So we're going to write return user choice. I'll just give you guys a few seconds to get that all typed up. what type of question would this be based on? So I'm not entirely sure what your question is there, but that might your question might get cleared up as we go along. So the next function we are going to make is we're going to make a function that allows the computer to choose. So that's where random comes in, because we want the choice to be essentially random. So this is going to return the computer's choice. And we're going to, as we've started all the functions, with the def keyword, and then we're going to write computer choose. We're not taking in any variables for this part. Now, for the computer's choice, we haven't covered this before, but we will cover this later on. You're going to be using a list. So to start, you're going to call the list a variable name like possible choices, whatever you want to call it, equals, and then in here you can put the list of choices. So there are only 3 different choices. There's fire, water, and grass. See how each element in the list is separated by a comma. This is something that we'll cover later on down the line, but it's important for this program here. And then after you've done that, you're going to write computer choice. So you're going to make a variable for the choice. And then you're going to set it to random. So we're going to use this random library here, dot choice, possible choices. So what's happening here is that the computer is going to choose from one of these items in the list, either fire, water, or grass. So that's what's happening here. And we want to return this choice that the computer makes to the main function. So computer choice. So just to kind of reiterate what we've done so far, we've created 2 functions, one for the user's choice and one for the computer's choice. Right now, this probably doesn't make a lot of sense. Why are we doing this? Well, we're going to create a main function to run everything in. So at the end here, you're going to write def main. This is standard across most Python programs. You'll have a main function that you run all of your other functions in. So if you do this for your GCC project, you're going to get massive brownie points even. But inside this main function, we'll introduce the game. You'll say, welcome to Monster Catcher. Next thing we want to do is allow the user to make a choice. So we're going to create a variable to store their choice in. So we'll say user choice is equal to user choose. The name of this function here. I'll just copy and paste it. Open brackets, close brackets. And just to prove it, we can also print out their choice. So we're going to write print your choice was a something monster. Dot format user choice. Why are there underscores? So underscores is just a way of writing variables. So these underscores here is just a way of, I wanted to have multiple words within my variable, so I've just used an underscore because you can't use spaces in variable names. Another way you can do it, if you don't want to use underscores, you could just write it like this instead. But that's why I've used underscores. It's just to write variables. What are brownie points? Brownie points, okay, brownie points aren't an official term in GCC. It just means that you'll get, it will seem like you know a lot more about programming if you use functions. Brownie points I think is a very old term. But yeah. So where was I? Yep, so you're allowing the user to choose a monster and then you can print out their choice. And then we want the computer to choose. So we're going to write computer dot underscore choice. just a variable name, and we'll allow the computer to choose with computer choose. And we can print out the computer's response as well. So we can say your opponent, or that's my enemy, chose a something monster. Dot format computer choice. So I'm going to stop there for a sec. So I need to take a breath. Let's have a look at the questions here. What do you mean by functions? These are functions here. So it's just a way of splitting up code into little chunks, and then we can call these little chunks later on down the line. So that's what functions are. One thing I'd also like you guys to pay attention is the order in which I call my functions. I want the user to choose first, and then I want the computer to choose second, so I've made that in the order. User goes first, computer goes second. Okay, now again, if I run my code currently, nothing is going to happen. So the last thing I want to do to make sure my code works is I need to call this main function here. This is where everything's happening. So if I write main, open brackets, close brackets, and run the program, now all my functions are going to start to run. So we've got that first line printed out. Welcome to Monster Catcher. It's asking me to choose a choice. It's taken from this function here, user choose. I can type in my answer, so I'm going to write fire as my monster. And then it says your choice was a fire monster, and your enemy, or the computer, chose a grass monster. So as you can see here, it's taking from these functions here. So that's how that's working. Could the computer choose first or no? Yes, the computer can absolutely choose first. The only difference is if you want the computer to choose first, you'll have to have this line, or these two lines, before the user choose. I've just wanted to set up so that the user chooses first. I'm pretty sure that's also the rules in the Pokemon games. But yeah, you can absolutely have the computer choose first. So, those are the first two functions. The next function is going to be a little bit longer, and we're going to want to take in the user's choice and the computer's choice in order to determine who is the winner of this round, let's say. So, sorry, could you explain what return means again? Yeah, absolutely. So, in order to get stuff out of the function, we need to use this return here, and that will put whatever value we have here in the variable. So that's what return means. So what it's doing, it does a little calculation. For example, at the computer, it does a little calculation to work out whether we want a fire monster, a water monster, or a grass monster, and then it returns that value to the variable. So anything that happens in a function is local. And what that means is it will stop. It won't work after the function ends. So that's why we have to return stuff to make it global. The more you start to use them, the more they'll make sense. What happens if you put print instead of return? You can, in some projects, print you can use. The problem is, for this one, for example, if we print out the user's choice, we can't do anything with it afterwards. We want to be able to determine the winner, so we need the user's choice out of that function. So that's why we do that. Some of them, you don't need to return anything, and you can just print stuff instead, and that works perfectly fine. But for this specific program, we want to take out the user's choice from this function, and we want to take the computer's choice outside of this function. So that's why we do that. Okay, I'm going to carry on. If there's any more questions, I will do my best to answer them. The next thing that we want to do is we want to determine a winner. So we're going to write a function, def determine winner. I've got a question there. Also, what does dot format do? Dot format, we've looked at that, I think day 2 or day 3. But basically what dot format does is it allows you to add variables into text or strings. So you see where these squiggly brackets are? What dot format does is it puts this variable into those squiggly brackets. It replaces them, essentially. You can also do the same thing by doing concatenation, so by adding plus signs as well, but dot format is just a nicer way of doing it. Okay, so determining a winner. So in our function, we want to take in two different values. We want to take in the user's choice, and we want to take in the computer's choice. And we're going to use these two values to work out who's the winner and who's the loser. So, in this function, this is a long function by the way, the first thing we're going to determine is whether or not it's a tie. So, we're going to use if statements here. So, if the user choice is equal to the computer's choice, if you're unfamiliar with if statements, I'd recommend you check out day 4, we covered them there. So if these two are equal, then we can print both players selected blank, full stop. It's a tie. And then we can also add in dot format as a choice. So that gets rid of at least 3 of our options there. Now, to make this slightly longer, we're going to have to add in all the times it's not a tie, aka has the user won or have they lost. So let's start with fire. So elif user choice equals fire and computer choice equals grass. Well, fire burns grass, so the user would win this round. So we'd say, you win this round. However, if they chose fire, and the computer chose water, well, water extinguishes fire, so they would lose. I even spelt water wrong. What if the user entered something else other than fire, water, grass, like air, for example? Now, that is something that I haven't considered in this program. What you could do as an extension is tell the user to add in a different input if they try to add in fire, water, or grass. My program assumes that the user won't choose one that isn't available, but that's something you could do. You could say to the user, if they put in air or lightning or fairy, you could say, that's not one of the choices, choose again, for example. That's something you could add in your own time. But this program assumes that the user is following the rules. So yeah, elif user choice was fire and computer choice is water, you lose this round. I've got another question here. Do you use elif in Python, and in pseudocode you use else if? Yeah, so pseudocode use else if, but else if will not work in Python. Use elif for Python. And then once we've talked about fire, we also need to talk about water and grass. So I'm going to stop talking for this one because my voice is going. But if user choice equals water, choice equals fire, well, they're going to lose. Hang on. Water, and they choose fire. Water extinguishes fire, they would win. I've got a question here. Can I check it like this while user choice not input? That could work, Abdul. That would be a very smart way of doing it. Kind of makes sense now. Thanks for explaining. No worries. That is my job. So else if I'm gonna start to copy stuff, because typing takes a lot out of me, guys. It's especially with these very long-winded if statements. Grass sucks up water, they're gonna lose. And then elif user choice is, oh, hang on, those need to be in water. Hopefully you guys can see where this is going, and you don't need me to explain all of this if statement to you. I'm just writing it out for complacency, I guess? Not sure. Equals water. Well, grass sucks up water. They're gonna win. Do you need to do this a variety? Do you have to do all these variety of options, or no? How many times can you use elif and if? If you can only use once per statement, elif you can have multiple times. You could have just made a variable in window check. Yeah, this was quite a long-winded way of doing it. The only reason I did that way is just to kind of explain how elif statements work. There are a lot better ways of doing this. You could probably Google about 5,000 different ways of doing this a lot better. I just wanted to use very simple programming stuff. But if you guys know how to do Boolean operations, and you can use lists and all kinds of magical ways of doing it, more power to you. You're a lot smarter than me. Can you send a PDF of this explanation? I'm afraid I can't really do that, but you can watch this stream as we're going along and just kind of copy it down. It should be pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, so that is, okay, we've got 2 fires, 2 waters, 2 grass. That looks like that's all the options. So now that we have that, we can now determine a winner in our main function. So currently, if I just run my program here, I think you've done the water and grass one. You've lost for one, but hang on. Yeah, so if you do water and they do grass, you lose. But if you do grass and they do water, you win. If you can explain to me which one I've done wrong, please do, but I can't see it. But yeah, so now that you've done the determine winner function, again, if you just run this program, it's not going to determine a winner yet. So if I say my thing is water, again, no winner is determined. We need to call this function here. So if I do, after we've chosen each monster for our round, you can say determine winner. And inside here, oh, even notice here how it wants 2 options. We can write user choice here, this variable here, and we can write computer choice. So what's going to happen now is this function is going to run with our 2 choices in there, and it's going to determine who wins. So if I run the program, I'm going to choose a fire monster. The computer also chose a fire monster. It's a tie. If I run it again, please don't choose another fire monster. Choose another fire monster. That's the problem with doing random. Sometimes it just chooses the same thing again and again. Oh, please. Okay, I'm going to do it one more time. Hey, there we go. So, my choice was fire from here. Computer chose grass from random, and then it determined a winner. So fire and grass, I win this round. So that's how that works. Whew. That was a long-ass program. But you can see by breaking it up into these different functions, if one of these was to stop working, I could very quickly figure out which one wasn't working. So that's why we put those into functions there. Before I add anything else to these lovely functions, do I have any questions? Are there much simpler ways to write this? Yes and no. Like, yes, there is a lot more concise ways, but a lot of that requires more technical understanding. This was the most simpler way I could do it with using all of our current knowledge that we've done throughout these past few sessions. Wouldn't it take less lines of code if you used a number for an element? Yeah. I've seen people do this by doing mathematics. So they've done, like, they set fire to be 0, water to be 1, grass to be 2, and then they've added numbers or subtracted numbers, and then they'll be able to work out who won from there. That's a perfectly valid way of doing it. This is just one of the ways you could do it. But I'm really impressed that you guys can find lots of different ways of doing it. That shows real strength in computer programming. So more power to you. But yeah, one more thing that I'll do before we end this session is show you that you can repeat these rounds again and again and again. So what you could do is you could use a for loop like we did before. So for I in range 5, for example, colon. I'm going to press the tab button here to put all these into this for loop, and rather than running the program again, I can play this game 5 times in a row without having to stop and start the program. So I'll show you what I mean. So if I choose as you can see, it plays again, and again, and again, and again, without me having to select running the program again and again and again. I'm going to add a kind of break here so you can actually see it. I've got a question here. What does for I in range mean? For I in range, that is a for loop. I believe we covered it last session, but basically what it is it's just a way of repeating something 5 times. So that's what the part here. If I change that number to 3, it will only repeat 3 times. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. The intended part repeat for the amount of times in the brackets. Yep, that is exactly right. The good thing about this game is there are so many different ways that you can take this. For example, I think we talked about this before, but you could check to make sure that the user is typing in only fire, water, and grass. You can add in more choices. You could, instead of having a computer choose, you could have a second user choose instead. You could have user chooser, and you could just swap out a function for computer with a function for a second user. There's so many different ways you could do this. You could also have a score element as well. If you wanted to work out who was the overall winner, rather than just having, you lose this round, you win this round, you could find out, okay, who wins the battle. That's one of the ways you could do it. Yeah, any questions so far? Someone said, this was fun, I won my games. Awesome, I'm glad you won your games. Brilliant. Okay. The second user would always win because they can see what the other person chose. That's true. That's, I didn't think of that one, but good observation. Someone asked when is the next session. The next session will be at the exact same time as this session next week. So it'll be Tuesday, starting from 5, ending at 6. So yeah, I'll just quickly wrap up this session. Just to let you guys know, we have what's it called? Words. Can't remember the words for what I was looking for now. Survey! That's it! We have a survey. So they're in the comments and also in the description of this video. There is a survey that you guys can fill in. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes, but it just helps us because it tells us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. If you could fill it out, that would be amazing. So just to wrap up what we did in this session, we looked at functions. We looked at how you create them, the basic syntax, how you can return values from them, and how you can call them in your program. Then we tried to use them in a very fun way by creating Monster Catcher, which was a program which you could have 4 different functions for. One where the user chooses, the computer chooses, and then you determine a winner. And then we ran all of that in the main function, which is standard across all Python programs and for the industry in general. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions that you want to ask just before we end on computer science or what we covered today or just the GCSE in general, feel free to ask. But yeah, what are we doing next week, and could we practice some content for people one? So next week we are covering something called Pygame. So the reason I chose a game for this session is because we're going to be looking more into making video games. But we'll also still be learning a lot of stuff along the way. I think you're more useful than my computer science teacher. That's very kind of you to say. Bless you. Okay, awesome. Yeah, if you guys have any questions on the GCSE or programming or what we covered today, or you have any comments, like what you're planning to do with your Monster Catcher game, that would also be great. Oh, you guys are sweet. Thank you. Are all of you? I don't think all of you are doing the GCSE. Who is doing GCSE? This time around. Someone says, I legit want to play this game now, thanks. I'm so glad that you want to play this game. That makes me very happy. Someone says you are doing the GCSE, awesome. What is the best way of revising GCSE computer science? It's a very good question. For a lot of the programming stuff, practicing programming. Whether it's Python or Java or any kind of programming language that you do on a regular basis, practice how to program. It will stick it more in your head than practicing something like pseudocode. If you actually practice the language, you'll be able to understand how it works, and if you make any mistakes, that will help you out. For the theory, like the architecture of a computer and stuff like that, reading questions and making flashcards. That's the way I learned. I made a bunch of flashcards on how the inside of a computer works. I believe that like RAM and ROM and computer architecture is still a part of it. So for those parts, theory, textbooks, and flashcards. Everything else, practice programming. It is the best way to learn it, is through practicing. So yeah, that would be my advice. A few of you are doing the GCSE as well, so yeah, brilliant. Good luck, guys. It's not the easiest GCSE in the world, but it's definitely my favourite GCSE that I took, so I've got a question here. Are there any websites? I don't know if I can recommend any particular websites off the top of my head, mainly because every GCSE exam board is different, unfortunately. I took OCR GCSE, but I know there's AQA and EdXL and WJEC, for example. There's so many different types of GCSE that I couldn't actually recommend any particular websites to study. Other than my tutor, I guess. Do you guys have any other questions on programming? Do you think I should practice a full paper or practice particular questions? I would recommend a full paper. It's scary, it's to practice the full paper, but it gets you in the mindset of actually going through the paper and figuring things out. It also allows you to be able to time yourself. Some GCSEs allow you an hour, some allow you an hour and a half, some allow you 2 hours. If you can time yourself and work out how much time it takes you to work out particular questions, then that's going to help you so much. Someone said automate the boring stuff with Python. Yeah, Python's great for automation, so brilliant. And yeah, that is the end of the screen, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you all next week.